When you visited some of these blue zones, because you've lived with the indigenous tribes and you
Mhm.
visited blue zones as well, you're getting all of this information from all of them. And some of those blue zones have the longest living communities. It seems like they're eating a heavy plant-based diet. Is that misunderstood, or are we missing some part of the story?
Unless I'm missing something, it's deeply misunderstood because every time I go to any of them, and I go for long periods of time, and I go multiple times, it has not been plant heavy at all, even in the ones that I really expected it to be.
Hey friends, welcome back to Meet the Truth. I'm Lauren Johnson. Today I'm sitting down with Mary Ruddick, a human ecologist who has spent years living with and studying indigenous communities around the world. People who've managed to avoid chronic illnesses that have become so normal in today's Western world. Mary is known as the Sherlock Holmes of Health, and for good reason. She's been called one of the world's leading voices on the microbiome and ancestral health. In this episode, we're discovering the truth behind the world's healthiest cultures and how disconnection from nature, food, and each other might be the real cause of modern disease. So grab a coffee, get comfy, let's dive in. Mary, thank you for joining me today. I'm so excited for this conversation. You've spent years living with indigenous tribes all over the world, people who are completely untouched by modern medicine or processed food. Let's start here. What kind of chronic illnesses did you see in these communities, if you saw any at all?
Well, it'll be hard for any new listener to understand this, and I'll come off sounding like a Pollyanna, but I saw zero. Truly zero chronic illness at all to any degree, whether it was toenail fungus to the smallest things to the larger things like MS and Parkinson's, dementia, and all of that. So as long as they were living their traditional lifestyle and eating their traditional diet for that region, for that culture, zero.
That is so incredible. That's impressive. I mean, and it's so eye-opening because we treat disease as inevitable, oh, my parents had this and it's generational, or I'm just bound to get this, but that's not the case. And especially for these people that are living so different lives from us,
Yes.
it's, we want some of that. So
Yes, they have generational retention. So they have equal health from generation to generation as long as they don't introduce anything from modernity. Whereas we are having the opposite. We are having weaker generation by generation. So people are looking at their parents, their grandparents as to a hint as to what they might get. But really, we're having all these new illnesses that didn't exist for many of those generations. And so we have quite a different story on our end of the world.
before we get back into it, I want to mention something I've been using lately and I've been absolutely loving. It's called SALTR. It's electrolytes made the way they should be. It's made with ancestral sea salt straight from the pristine waters of Norway. It's naturally rich in minerals, tests the lowest in heavy metal, and has 0 hidden ingredients. They use magnesium glycinate and potassium gluconate, so it's gentle on the gut, and it's a form that your body absorbs really well. And the citric acid they use comes from real citrus fruit, not corn, mold, or any other industrial byproduct, which I personally appreciate because I'm really sensitive to ingredients in most other products, and I have 0 issues with this. These actually make me feel so good. SALTR is sweetened with stevia leaf extract, and just a touch, just enough for taste and nothing more. So it's not overly sweet, it's not overly bitter or salty, it's perfect. My favorite flavors right now are the tart lime and the salted caramel coffee. These are so good. This is a little sour, a little sweet. It is so delicious. And the salted caramel coffee, I have everyone on this right now. My husband drinks it every day. He said we cannot be without this. This is super good ice, but this is definitely a must-have. They also have grapefruit, which is super good and unflavored. If you don't want any flavors of any kind, this is just electrolytes. And if you're like me and you cannot decide which one to try, I highly recommend the variety pack, but it does not come with the coffee. So you want to get both of these together. And if you want to save 10%, click on the link in the description below or use code Laura and Jay at checkout. And be sure to tell me which flavors you get and which ones you like the most. I hope you love these just as much as I do. So when you visited some of these blue zones, because you've lived with the indigenous tribes and you visited blue zones as well, you're getting all of this information from all of them. And some of those blue zones have the longest living communities. It seems like they're eating a heavy plant-based diet. Is that misunderstood, or are we missing some part of the story?
Unless I'm missing something, it's deeply misunderstood because every time I go to any of them, and I go for long periods of time, and I go multiple times, it has not been plant heavy at all, even in the ones that I really expected it to be. And so I think what's happened really is that people who have not studied health or nutrition formally are going into cultures or the culture and misreading what they're seeing. especially in terms of fats and things like that. I think the Greek one is a really good one because they didn't even put dairy and some of the main foods of their diet on their surveys, and so it really skewed the results as to what these folks ate. But they do have a long lifespan, and humans really are meant to have a long lifespan. I see that in the tribes as well, and a long health span, which is far more important. More and more people are dealing with chronic illness, and as one ever witnesses and experiences something beyond a flu, you don't really go for length of time when you're ill. You go for health span. So I find health span to be far more important, but whether it's lifespan or health span, it's very long, both in the tribes and in the blue zones. And, there's quite a bit to that. Like, there are lifestyle things that I often downplay a bit because I think they're overplayed. But there was just a big study about the length of life and health and what related, and it was the quality of our relationships. And one thing that is consistent across all these regions is that they have deep, close, lifelong relationships. They also dance every day. That's also one. But yes, yeah. So with our transient lifestyle and our lack of nuclear family these days, us all living in different places, that does play a role because that does add to stress, and that can deregulate the circadian rhythm, which then has a host of issues as well.
You mentioned community and having it be so important, and dancing and just having fun and enjoying life, I'm sure helps a lot, and how food is only part of the equation. From your time studying the tribes, what are we doing wrong in the West that's secretly destroying our health? Is there like the main things that we should be looking out for?
Should I give them in both categories for lifestyle? Yeah, and
Sure.
diet? Okay. I would say a big one is the transient lifestyle, plus not having lifelong core relationships that we're physically in touch with, where we're touching people and making eye contact. Texting is not enough. Uh, uh, Also, a bit of a tribe. We need our oxytocin bonds. We often think of oxytocin as this love hormone, but it's also what actually repels us from certain others, right? It makes us into a tribe, and humans are communal. We're a communal species. We're not like the sloths who get stressed if they're put with others. We get stressed alone. So I would say that is a really important thing. That's the lifestyle piece. But I will say, I do want to emphasize, because I think this is an important piece, that in the communities that I've gone to, when I go closer and closer towards civilization, and so perhaps one or two foods has been brought in, but the lifestyle is the same. So still there's the dirt floors, or, you're waking up with the sun. So the family structure hasn't changed. The health can start to change. And it's very minimal in comparison to what we're dealing with, but it's also very apparent. And so while I find lifestyle to be so incredibly important for lifespan and health span, the diet is actually a massive piece as well.
I'm so interested in what you have to say that I'm getting distracted on what the next question.
Oh, I love that. That's a good sign. That's a good sign. You're doing great. Yeah.
Let's talk about the flip side. People who are already sick. If someone's dealing with a serious chronic illness like autoimmune disease, gut issues, or even some of the more serious health issues, what is wrong with eating plant foods when they're trying to heal?
Most things. So we have a bit of a comedy of errors amongst the dietary and health world, in that if you take an eagle-eye view, it's all pretty funny when you look at the errors that we are making as humans and the assumptions. And one of them is that if it's plant food, if it's natural, that it's good for us, and that we should eat more, and that we should eat more of the colors and all of this. But the plants come with an enormous amount of plant toxins, and we don't have the digestive system to break down the cellulose to break into some of the nutrition. Further, depending on what kind of bacteria we have in our microbiome, we could be really feeding the wrong bacteria, or even killing some of our really good bacteria by over-consuming the plant products. So it's not historical to eat the way people are eating now in any fashion, and the plants come at a greater cost because they come with toxins as well as potentially a little bit of nutrition if you can break into it.
Yeah, I definitely understand that, because coming from a place where I'm very histamine sensitive and very oxalate sensitive,
Yes.
meat was literally my saving grace. So I did the carnivore diet, and it healed all of my symptoms. But when I start to reintroduce certain plants or vegetables, some of those symptoms come back. So is the carnivore diet healing it, or is it just keeping the symptoms away? I know this is kind of a
Oh, no, let's dive in.
but if you could dive
Yeah.
into that a little bit.
I would actually really love to because this is a bit of a new phenomenon. So, when I was practicing 10 years ago, carnivore was kind of the magic trick for histamine disorders. And it was the surprise one because usually you would do antihistamine plants and all of that. But I've started to see, and you're not alone, I think most practitioners have started to see a lot of people that kind of get stuck there. And it may not feel like you're stuck because you have the freedom of your health now, but moving on is difficult. When that's the case, what I find, and there may be things that I don't know about, so I want to put that clause in there. But what I found is that there's usually either mucosal eating microbes, so like Klebsiella, Streptococcus, Staph, Pseudomonas, ones that are actually eating down the mucosal layer in your stomach, which when that gets to a certain point, you are going to react with histamines regardless. So your histamines are going to go through the roof. So adding in a supplement or food is going to be very, very difficult. That's one aspect. Another is just general mucosal collapse. So focusing on rebuilding the mucosa, which is not something many people talk about. I'm really working on getting that to the public so that you all can use it step by step. It's something you can do at home. And the other one would be a lack of the birth microbes and things that you need. So if you came into it as a C-section or even as someone who's born naturally but had had a lot of antibiotics, it is possible to starve out some of those microbes if it's done for long enough. Now, we don't see that in the traditional carnivore tribes, but that's because our microbes come in little packs. They're like little gangs. And so our good microbes, if we lose one, the other ones will kind of like, or start to lose one, they'll actually kind of produce its food to keep it around. Now, we see that in the traditional context, but in the modern context, our microbiome is so damaged that that often doesn't happen. So that's a big piece of it. And then finally, I would say it's introduced too quickly and too rough. It's rarely that because usually someone who's gone through a big health challenge has learned by 1,000 cuts to be very gentle with adding things in. But, start with 1/8 of a teaspoon, 32nd of a teaspoon. Get those little chemistry spoons. Sometimes you have to re-educate the body as to what you want to break down. So it can start producing amylase, the enzyme for carbohydrates. Your little microbes can come back out of hibernation to break that down. Those kind of things can help a lot.
That's
Mhm.
good. Thank you. I know I kind of piggybacked off of this
Mhm.
interview and asked some questions that I was also curious about because I'm finally getting a chance to talk to you. So thank you. But
My pleasure.
if we could jump back
Mhm.
into what we've been talking about with what you've learned from those blue zones and indigenous tribes, what do they do so when they're sick, when they
Mhm.
come down with an illness or they
Mhm.
think they're getting something, how do they treat those? Do they, they don't have access to much medicine there, but what do they do?
Well, the truly traditional ones don't get sick. I'll be walking around and I'll see, say, wormwood that would treat the malaria of the area, or there'll be a big bilharzia outbreak everywhere else, and they've got the same soil and the same water, but they don't get it. So they don't have that. Now, what they do have in certain regions is incredible emergency medicine. I've been really surprised by that. So for very poisonous snake bites that we would very likely die for, or at least lose a leg, they have methods for that in certain regions. So that kind of thing they have. One of the best ones that I've seen is the mimosa tree and the way that that is used for certain snake bites in Central America. But if I go to some of the tribes that have slightly modernized, even just a little bit, like T-shirts and a couple things of food, then they might get something like pneumonia when they're like 80s. 90s, some of them might catch something every few years, and they'll have different tree barks and things like that to use. Now, there are some societies that were very plant medicine based that unfortunately were colonized too soon for me to study, like the San tribe. But some of my friends have been to regions that are older. Uh, uh, before they were kind of modernized. And so we have an insight as to how that was done. Also, some of the Batwa, the Pygmy tribes in Uganda and that region, They had a bit of plant medicine, but it was more like food. So, in fact, actually, that's how I've seen it. So I've seen it more as a food, and if you've studied herbology, then you know how it's used. So I'll give you the example of the Chaga tribe in Kilimanjaro. They make something called they call it banana beer. It really tastes a bit like oatmeal. It's like a thick drink. It's delicious and it's fun, and you sing and you dance and you have it every Sunday. It ferments for a week, but it's made with just a little bit of quinine from the fever tree bark, which is an anti-malarial and anti-parasitic. And most parasitic eggs are every 7 days or less. So if you have that every 7 days, it's very preventative. But that's just part of their traditional ferment. So I would say it's primarily worked into the diet without thinking about it as medicine, as a preventative.
Wow. I wish that we kept some of that information and knowledge in the Western culture instead of going straight to medication, because anytime I've taken herbs or homeopathy or used food as medicine, I heal, it seems, faster and more efficiently, and I don't get it as soon or ever again. And it's like,
Yes.
I wish more people treated things that way.
Me
You,
too. I wish this knowledge was more known. Yes.
you've talked a lot about the healing mindset
Mm.
in how important it is to have that mindset in your healing process. Can you explain what that means and how this shaped your own healing journey and your own view of health?
Yes. I had to take it less personally, is what I had to do. So I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the dogma about, uh, healing through your mind and that sort of thing right now, the way it's presented, because I think it actually blames the victim a bit. It's like, well, you just haven't thought yourself out of it yet, or you should feel happier. And I just think that's rather condescending, like very condescending and a bit cruel, honestly, because typically it's very well-meaning advice given by people who have never been through even a sliver of what the other person is going through. But I think whenever we're facing a massive challenge, whether we're at a wartime, whether we're trying to escape an avalanche that is like 1,000 miles away from where we need to get to, or whether we're building a business or trying to heal from something impossible, the mindset is very similar. You break it down into very small tasks and you do not think about the results. You have to let the results go. Because if I found for myself, at least, you all can do whatever you want, but what I found for myself was that if I got myself into a pendulum swing of like, oh, did this work? Or I feel worse today, so this must not be working. It was too reactive for body systems that generate histamines as they regenerate, right? So the cell, as it regenerates, releases histamines. And for anyone who's broken a bone, it could be more painful to heal than the actual injury. So healing isn't so intuitive. And so if we react to the symptoms, we can actually shoot ourselves in the foot, so to speak, and not follow the right protocol or one of the ways that we could get out. And so what I found was I had to take an eagle eye view and look at what systems, rather than get lost in the weeds of the red herrings of all the dozens of diagnoses and symptoms and variation of symptoms on a day-to-day basis, and instead focus on what would work for those systems, and then really work on bringing my emotional state to neutral as much as possible and making my purpose presence and nothing else. Because if I looked at the future, it was too overwhelming. And the past made me sad because I liked my life before. So I really tried to break it down. So the healing mindset to me is learning how to catch your wandering thoughts, bring them back to the present. If it's stressed or negative or reporting on a symptom or pain, make it neutral. You don't have to go positive. You don't have to lie to yourselves. At least I don't think so. And and that will start to make the body feel a lot more safe. And then you break it down into little things that often seem too small to help that really do help, like keeping a really strict routine, which is almost impossible for a healthy person. It's extra hard for someone sick, but that does convey safety to the physical body. So doing things like that to bring it in.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Now
sure.
tell me a little bit about what you eat.
Oh,
What you typically eat for breakfast or dinner? Some of your favorite meals, some of them are maybe some healing meals
mhm.
or just what your typical eating day looks like?
Well, I'll tell you, especially with all my travels, it varied a lot, but I am here for like 2 months, which is a long time for me. So I'm in the States at the moment. And when I'm here, I eat my favorite pleasure foods that you can't get elsewhere. So, but I'll say in general, I'm kind of detached from food these days, if I'm honest. I don't have cravings. It's rare for me to get extremely hungry. It does happen, but my blood sugar is really stable. So I tend to base my diet around meat or fish, depending on what region I'm in. I'm in Texas right now, so it is meat. But when
Nice.
I'm by the sea, then it's going to be more seafood. And then that may be it. I love dairy. So lately I've been having a lot of yogurt. My friends have a ranch. It's a beautiful A2 place. So yeah, I've been eating a lot of yogurt every day, and it's really nice. I also like berries. I used to love to bake. So when I'm in a place for a time, I make my own ice cream with like real eggs and cream. Sweetened with stevia. I know that's a sin to some, but it's my favorite. And sometimes I'll flavor the milk with the old-fashioned ways where you like cook the cream with lavender and then you turn it into an ice cream. It's like really good.
Yep.
So I love to have like a kind of beautiful food, but I eat a lot for the birth microbes. So one of my favorite foods is probably going to get me a lot of flack, but it's true. I love green plantain chips so much. And they feed a wide range of the birth microbes. So I give myself that permission. And I also do a bit of tapioca. I like the Brazilian bread that is the tapioca, cheese, egg, and fat. You just eat small amounts. It's a good carrier for butter. I personally wouldn't eat this if I was trying to heal, but when you're healthy, that can feed some of your birth microbes. So it can be good. It can actually make you stronger. And then I do things like that I've learned from the tribes, like larch tree bark tea. That's a larch galactin. It's an immune regulatory. I do a lot of teas when I'm stable in one place, so like hibiscus tea, which also has benefits. It feeds akkermansia. It dislodges enterococcus from the bladder wall, all sorts of things. So it's pleasant, it's pleasurable, it's beautiful to drink, and it has health benefits. So I tend to do those kind of things, but in general, whatever is fresh around me, I'm going to make meat-based and then maybe build on.
That's also really refreshing to listen to because being in the carnivore world, it's hard to think about all of these other things that people are eating and seeing someone that healed so profoundly like you did, and now you're able to eat all of these amazing things. And some people want to stay carnivore forever, but
Yes.
for some, they're just using it as a healing tool, like I am. And I'll eat, a few berries or, a few things here and there, but not very much. So it's nice to see someone that has fully and wholly healed and is just embracing their life like you are.
This is what I want for everyone. There's no reason we can't get to this place where you can have flexibility with your diet. And flexibility and resilience is a safety mark for your future, right? You've been through so much. Anyone who's been through this has been through so much. You've learned on a very visceral level how the floor can just come out from under you. And so to know that you have a foundation where you don't have to be careful, you make good choices because of your history, better than most, but it's not a have to, it's really ideal. So I personally, if I was back there and my symptoms would come back when I would eat a food, I would stay on that diet. So I think both are very appropriate. But my goal when I'm helping someone is always to try to get them to that place of flexibility. Yes.
That's amazing. But Mary,
Yes.
this was so eye-opening. Thank you for sharing what you learned and learned from the healthiest people on earth and helping us see true healing is about much more than just the food that we're eating.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Friends, if you enjoyed this conversation today, tap the like button and hit subscribe and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your biggest takeaway. And stay tuned. We've got more incredible interviews coming your way with top experts, doctors, and researchers who are changing the way we think about health. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll see you next time.